part still intact, but again, there was no real record of that in the state historical office's record for the park. So I assumed that they were built between 1934 and 35 with the park. The neat part about that too is when they go down, they kind of end in a ravine. Well, they start going up the next slope too. And if you're ever out there, you can kind of see where I'm going, where I'm talking about, and they kind of just stop. What I probably assumed happened was they had developed up to that point, had planned on developing further, but just had not got to that point, or never really got down to that point. So I want to continue them. I think we need to continue those and recreate the trails that are back there. So again, like I said, no record of the stairs was included in the National Register of Historic Places. So. The other two structures that were built here, there were these freestanding fieldstone fireplaces or chimneys. There's one right on the north side of the road, on the south side, and those are just to the east of where the pippa trees and the shelter are as well. They're about 6 foot tall. They kind of taper to the top of the chimney. They've got a 3-foot firebox down below. And at one point, they had a metal grate on them for a grill and things like that. I remember when I was a kid, I believe this one, the other one's still there. I don't know what kind of shape it was, but I know I could use these. Again, I'm 42, so 30 years ago, roughly. So, but these are also some things that we want to kind of get revamped so people can not only enjoy them as a historical object, but also use them too, because they are so functional. And again, only one of those of the two remains on the south side of the road. Squirrel Hollow, Redwood Avenue Stone Wall. So again, we mentioned earlier that that was the old stagecoach route, Sioux City to Des Moines, or Des Moines to Sioux City. I couldn't find an actual year or account of when that road went out of service, but it sounded like it was a number of years of flooding, things like that. The road was in rough shape, pretty much impassable. So as part of, again, the Public Works and Civil Works associations, they created this stone wall, retaining wall here, so they could build up behind that stone wall and create the road as we know it today. Or similar to what we did. This picture is from about 1962, so this is about 30 years after this wall was built. Again, it's still there today. You can still see, if you go poke around, you can still see the old wall there today. The wall rises about 6 to 8 feet, depending on where you're at. And C. Arthur Elliott, county engineer at the time, remember it being 10 to 15 feet thick in most places. So it's a heck of a wall. There's not much that's going to take that thing down. Some of the last things that were created were these entrance portals. And you can kind of see here in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a stone structure. Those two structures are still there. There's one right there at the bottom of the hill before you go up to the shelter. And then if you go to the north, when you get to the top of the hill out of the river valley, there's another one right there. There's no sign in that one. There's the other one. But these are, again, some things that we look to recreate as we're kind of revamping things in the park. Kind of neat, like I said, I didn't realize that this is what the old posts looked like. I just kind of thought they were a 4x4 timber, similar to what we have today, but they were actually cut and peeled logs that Barney and the folks, his conservation staff built. So pretty neat deal. They've been replaced a number of times. Like I said, right now we've got a recreation of that sign. It's just metal, on 4x4 posts. So. Squirrel Hollow Park. This is one of the other structures that they did build when they were there. Again, the backdrop, I don't recall the backdrop being there. Again, when I was a kid, I don't know how many years ago that's been gone. But I do understand they still had softball tournaments out there until not really that long ago. The first park attendant or caretaker lived in a trailer and east of here until the secondary roads department took over management, and then the conservation board, when it was organized, took over in 1958. So we can't talk about our parks today without talking about the conservation system in Iowa. A lot of folks, know a lot of grandfathers of conservation, although Leopold being one, George Washington Carver being another one, Ada Hayden, there's a bunch of them out there. But another one, especially here in Iowa, would be Thomas McBride, Lake named after him. So in 1896, and nobody really even had this idea, he addressed the Iowa Academy of Science with his paper titled County Parks. He thought that all counties, not necessarily in the state of Iowa, but everywhere, should have parks that are managed by a county, not necessarily just the state, but on a kind of local level. You have more folks there to manage it, you're not spreading your resources thin. Just thought it would be a really good idea. So the Iowa State Conservation Commission presented the first bill to the Iowa General Assembly in 1943 to permit establishment of the conservation and recreation agencies at the county level. Not too long later, only 12 years, they revisited the bill and passed and required each of Iowa's 99 counties to pass a referendum during the general election to establish a county conservation board. I was telling some folks here earlier, Iowa's very unique. Most states have county conservation, or not county, conservation districts where it's 8 to 10 counties. They're in one part of the state, and then they're managed by a crew of people. We're lucky here in Iowa that all 99 counties have a conservation board. We're all operate the same. We're all a little bit different, but again, we're all part of the system. We all network together. We all get ideas from each other. So it's a really great network of folks. I think there's, gosh, how many employees? Jake was just at the new place here, 1,400. So there's 1,400 employees just in the county conservation system in the state of Iowa now, which is awesome. But we need more, so the only anybody out there. So here in Greene County, there were a number of county conservation boards that were created in 1956. I believe there were 12 of them. Greene County and a number of other ones waited a couple of years. So on July 29, 1958, the first Greene County Conservation Board meeting was held at the courthouse in Jefferson. So, fun fact, Guy Richardson was nominated as the first Greene County Conservation Board chairman, but he was not technically the first Greene County Conservation Board chairman. Dick Seaman was. At the beginning of the meeting, they had to have a chair to do the rest of the business, so they designated him as the temporary chair, and then later appointed Guy Richardson as the first chair. So if anybody ever says Guy Richardson was the first county conservation director or board member, you can say, no, it was Dick Seaman. So I don't know if I'll ever get to that point, but just in case. So that first year, the Board of Supervisors and Conservation Board agreed on an operating budget of $500, which was increased to $36,000 in 1959. To kind of put that into perspective, now we operate on just below about $500,000 budget as far as taking care of all our parks, wages, like I said, so a little bit different than it was, 75 years ago. So not too long after conservation was formed in 1960, they got to work. Sam Hite was hired as Greene County's first conservation director, and he didn't serve very long, but he served until his death in 1962 when Barney Hobart took over as director, and Barney was here for a very long time. Did a lot of really neat things for Greene County. So with the help of the Conservation Board, Barney and his assistant Wayne Luke, so they only had 2 employees back then, we're up to 400. So they got to work developing, like I said, Hyde Park north of Scranton, Oak Hill Park out on Highway 30, Henderson Park south of Jefferson, and Squirrel Hollow Park, which we were talking about today. So within 10 years of the inception of the County Conservation Board in Greene County, the board was now managing 5 parks, 6 river accesses, with boat ramps, and totaling 239 acres. So we manage about 2,000 acres now. After 30, 35 years of wear and tear, weather, things like that, it was time to do some upgrading. So in about mid-60s, they did do some upgrades to the park, and then prior to that, over that 30 years, they did add some amenities to the park. If some of you may know, kind of on the south side of the park, they moved in an old schoolhouse. The old foundation is still there with the chimney. It burnt down at some point. We couldn't find any record of how or when that actually happened. But again, that was brought in, an additional restroom facility, still the same one that's out there today, a playground, pedestrian bridges, there were 3 of those. I believe 5 electrical kind of circular pedestals were added for campers. And that was done, again, looking at photo records, I don't have any written records, but somewhere between 1936 and 1963 when all that was added. So I would assume it was probably likely when the Conservation Board took over management in 58 because there was funding to manage the park. Much of the original added infrastructure, again, like I said, from the 60s is still there today. So the toilet, the playground, and then the original infrastructure from the 30s, a lot of that's still there too. Unfortunately, in the summer of 1966, the beautiful Squirrel Hollow shelter house was burned down by vandals. Luckily, the whole structure was not wooden, so it wasn't a total loss. They They were able to quickly replace, they replaced everything that year with like materials. They wanted to kind of recreate what was there before. The only thing that was different, instead of using wood shake shingle, they used asphalt, but click to the next one. Here's kind of down there in the bottom, that's them rebuilding, and that's the following year, 1967, I believe, with the new roof and new wooden structure on there.
Okay, so it's on the National Register, right?
That is, yes, it is.
And a lot of it burned down in '58, and they put it on the National Register in the '70s?
66, I think.
Oh, 66?
Yep.
It's interesting that it went on the register
With the new structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was stated in there too, because they talked a lot about the wildlife area and some of the stuff that was added after, although significant, it says not technically historical. So yeah, I would say, and maybe they did just because of the stone structure, maybe that's why they added it to the registry. I don't know. But again, interesting to say the least. All right, so about the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, County Conservation Board, when we kind of began, we were really focused on recreation. Still are really focused on recreation, but over the years, we've been kind of trying to find more of a balance between recreation and restoration and preservation of the areas that we have now. And that's not just the structures that are there, that's the natural resources. So in about 1979, they started doing some construction on Rock Riffle, and this was at Squirrel Hollow and 4 other locations up and down the Raccoon River, just in Greene County. I understand there's more in Carroll County, a couple in Sac too. And these were created, like I said, all up and down the North Raccoon River to increase habitat for game fish and kind of provide some breeding grounds for some of those game fish too. 5 similar dams, like I mentioned, were constructed throughout the county. 4 still exist today. The McMahon Access Rock Riffle is no longer. It was blown out in the spring flood of 2019. I'll talk a little bit about that here shortly too. In 1993, they created 3 jetties, 2 on the upstream side of the Rock Riffle and 1 on the downstream. They were getting a lot of erosion downstream, so they kind of created some artificial structures that would alter the flow of the river to help the neighbor out down below. You probably couldn't do that today without a lot more permitting and red tape, but they were able to get it done back in 1993. Some of the other stuff they were doing in 1986, the Conservation Board acquired 147 additional acres surrounding the park for $37,642. They utilized local funds from the Conservation Board, state habitat fee funds. A lot of acquisitions in the 80s and 90s were done through license sales and things like that, hunting fishing license sales, ammo sales. There was a lot of money back then and land was cheap, so Dan Towers, kudos to him, he acquired a lot of land in the county, and good for him, because like I said, now it's not that easy. So this area, kind of up here to the north, you can kind of see where I've highlighted it. That'd be Squirrel Hollow Wildlife Area, and the park proper is kind of encompassing all of that. Now, this area wasn't just like a recreation area for campers, things like that. This was now actually designated as a hunting area for hunting, fishing, and trapping. You can do other things there, you just want to be careful of something down here. Squirrel Hollow Wildlife Area, Atkins Bridge Access, just to the south there, that next green bubble, and Ruth Hansen Wildlife Area, that green bubble south of the blue bubble there, has created a corridor for wildlife for a green belt along the North Raccoon River in southeastern Greene County. And we're still currently pursuing land acquisitions in this area. It's kind of one of our priority areas, just down here south of the Hansen area. Again, with land prices being what they are, we weren't really in the market for some land down there with the DNR, I understand, with the help of our Natural Heritage Foundation, is pursuing some of that. And again, it's all timber ground, it's all marginal, it's not tillable. But to kind of add that green belt and add to that corridor for our wonderful wildlife here in the county. So in 2004, local and surrounding saddle clubs, folks at Silva's, just live right up the road, started to generate a lot of enthusiasm about horseback riding throughout the parks. They kind of identified, this is going on in some state parks, kind of adds to the natural ambiance, the history of the park, and things like that too. So late summer of 2006, I believe it was earlier that the Conservation Board did officially decide to develop the area in the southeastern part of the park into an equestrian campground. They installed 1030 amp RV pedestals which is the only 30-inch green pedestals in the park as we speak. Hitching posts for the horses, and a trail that was created by way of the volunteers that were from the local clubs that had created that throughout the park. This map on the left, you can kind of see some of those trails laid out there. Unfortunately, in the summer of 2020, devastating derecho kind of started here in Greene County, or this part of the state, and moved its way east and destroyed a lot of things along its way. Well, it kind of got started at Squirrel Hollow Park and lost a lot of trees, some infrastructure. I'll talk a little bit about that here on the next couple slides as well. So yeah, Mother Nature and Father Time, they sure take a toll on things, and they have on Squirrel Hollow over the years. Constant flooding in the area, years of weathering. That ramp was originally built in the 70s, and massive ice flow in the spring of 2019 irreparably damaged the Squirrel Hollow boat ramp. Does anybody else know what it damaged that year that we damaged? The Rapid River Valley Trail Bridge. So we lost about 400 feet of that, and then McMahon Access, as I mentioned earlier, those beautiful rock riffles, that's no longer happening.